2022 has been an absolutely insane ride in the crypto world. From one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, FTX, going bankrupt, all the way to one of the largest algorithmic stablecoins, Terra Luna, completely imploding. We've seen absolute carnage across the entire industry, which has countless people on the sidelines pointing their fingers and screaming, regulations are coming. Crypto regulations have been a hot topic in the industry for quite some time now, but they're getting a bunch of extra attention lately in light of these recent events. But what does that actually mean? Don't we already have regulations in crypto? What new ones might be coming, and what could it mean for the future of this industry and also crypto prices? Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about in this video today as a blockchain developer myself who's been watching this space day in, day out, and working in it for over 5 years. So before we get into that, if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to become a blockchain master, step-by-step, start to finish, change your career, land your first 100K job, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. All right, so let's get into this. Let's talk about crypto regulations. So I want to first, put a disclaimer here that, of course, none of this is to be taken as legal advice or financial advice because I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a financial advisor by any stretch of the imagination. But I do pay pretty close attention to this conversation because it's highly relevant to the industry that I specialize in. And so what I want to do in this video is actually talk about the conversation that's being had about crypto regulations and the important parts to pay attention to. So, we do already have regulations in the crypto space. And so what I really want to focus on this video are the future regulations that could be coming, the areas of interest, and how that could directly impact the space for better or for worse long term. And also that I'll mostly be looking at this from the lens of US regulatory frameworks. So let's start off with our first point here, which is there's a lot of gray area on who is going to be in charge of regulating specific crypto assets or enforcing those regulations, I should say. Is it going to be the SEC or is it going to be the CFTC? So what does that mean if you're not familiar with that? There are two main government agencies here that could potentially be in charge of enforcing these types of regulations. One is the SEC, or the Security and Exchange Commission, or the CFTC, which is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. These are two pretty active agencies in finance, okay? So you're talking about one that's primarily, regulating things having to do with equities or stocks, okay? And then other things that are primarily used for regulating commodities futures. So, like wheat and oil and stuff like that. And this type of ambiguity makes it harder for these regulations to be strongly enforced. And so, the question is it's not should all of cryptocurrency be regulated by the SEC or the CFTC? It's which cryptocurrency should be regulated by which agency. And so it's a pretty widely held view that, Bitcoin should be treated as a commodity and is therefore, regulated under the CFTC. It's also a pretty widely held view that Ether is a commodity as well, as hinted by the CFTC chair, although the SEC chair has disagreed on that point. And while there is some ambiguity there's a ton of question marks when you're talking about every single other cryptocurrency and what it does. And if you go to any cryptocurrency, website like CoinGecko.com to check the prices, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies listed here. Each of these would have to be individually evaluated to determine what their underlying, characteristics are and whether they should be regulated by which, agency. All right, now one thing I want to say here is that, there's a lot of people who are worried about, all these different cryptos being classified as securities and that just being game over, okay? So the thing you have to understand is, let's say that a cryptocurrency that you hold, becomes classified as a security and is now, underneath the SEC's jurisdiction. That doesn't mean that it's just game over for the cryptocurrency and you have to throw it away or something like that. It just means that they now have to comply with the regulations from the SEC. Now, that could be the issue to where they're not compliant, right? And then they either get shut down, but just because something becomes classified as a security doesn't mean that it's game over. All right, the next major aspect of crypto regulations has to do with stablecoins, okay? Because this is a huge topic. Like I said before, we saw Terra Luna blow up early this year. That really, alerted the mainstream media. And that's one area that I think we're going to see pretty big crackdowns, on crypto in the coming months and years. So let's first talk about what a stablecoin is and fundamentally how it works. So a stablecoin is a cryptocurrency whose price is pegged to another asset, usually a fiat currency of some kind. The most common types of stablecoins are US dollar stablecoins, like USDC, for example. Now, how do you make a stablecoin work in the first place? How is it actually pegged to the US dollar? Well, most stablecoins, the whole idea is that you could go to the stablecoin issuer and purchase the stablecoin directly with fiat currency, or you could redeem your coins one-to-one for fiat currency. All right. And the implication there is that, if everybody or a lot of people, come to redeem their, stable coins at the same time and demand their money back, that they should be able to do that without having some sort of, bank run on the currency itself that would cause it to completely, implode. And so we've seen horror stories like the Terra Luna disaster of an algorithmic stablecoin, okay, which is supposed to have this mechanism inside of it, this kind of black box that keeps the price pegged. But we saw that thing absolutely blow up. There's a lot of fears that, different stablecoins in the market that aren't algorithmic stablecoins, like Tether, for example, don't actually have the type of backing that they claim to. And a lot of people came in to redeem their Tether coins, that, Tether would collapse and that would bring down the entire crypto space with it. And so for this reason, we're likely going to see regulations around stable coins. So precisely on how they actually are backed, okay? So what I think is most likely here is that we're going to see regulations that determine transparency on where the funds actually are behind these stable coins. So if a stablecoin claims to have this market cap that it can, handle its redemptions, they have to prove that they've got that and actually work with other compliance agencies to prove those reserves, much farther than what they, the papers that they've published to date. Now, the other thing is we're probably going to see an outright crackdown on things like algorithmic stablecoins, that they've been a complete failure to date, and they're probably just going to get banned. I was just watching an interview recently with SEC Chair Gary Gensler when he's comparing stablecoins to banks and money market funds and how they have this type of transparency and how this is critical for crypto. And to me, that shows us where we're headed in terms of stablecoin regulation, basically making transparency paramount, and then also probably just an outright ban of algorithmic stables. All right, the next big area of interest for crypto regulations are centralized cryptocurrency exchanges, okay? We've seen a ton of drama this year around FTX, going bankrupt. People had a lot of suspicion about other different cryptocurrency exchanges, becoming insolvent and everybody's withdrawing their keys. Withdrawing their funds to their own keys. But let's talk about cryptocurrency exchange regulations because we already do have a significant amount of regulations around cryptocurrency exchanges, particularly in the United States. We're talking about money transmitter laws. Okay, we're talking about KYC compliance. Okay, the U.S. has certain regulations on what countries it can and cannot serve. Like you can't serve customers from certain sanctioned countries. But we're likely to see further crackdown than what's already in place. That's the thing. People say there's a naive idea that cryptocurrency exchanges aren't regulated. They're actually heavily regulated already. FTX was regulated, but it still blew up, okay? So the crackdown that we're likely to see coming in the future are things that are going to prevent, fraud and manipulation, or at least I should say intended to prevent fraud and manipulation. We'll see if that's the actual outcome. And so most likely, probably the biggest things that we're going to see if we're learning from things like FTX is kind of like what we saw with stablecoins, which is transparency. What's happening when customers actually deposit their funds into the cryptocurrency exchange? Are they staying on the cryptocurrency exchange? Or are a reasonable amount of those funds staying on the cryptocurrency exchange? Or are they leaving the exchange to do really risky, yield-bearing practices or investment practices? I realize that, we do a similar type of thing with fractional reserve banking, although it's not always the same type of investments. But in crypto, we're probably going to see more types of regulations of what you can and can't do with customer funds, and making that transparency of what's going on with customer deposits way higher, with the intent to prevent the type of situation where we've seen where a cryptocurrency exchange goes insolvent. The people, when they deposit their money, are in a situation where they just can't get it back at all. All right, so the next major area of interest for crypto regulation is going to be decentralized finance, or DeFi, okay? And the real question is, how is decentralized finance going to get regulated? Is it going to be regulated just like centralized crypto services, or will decentralized crypto services be regulated with their own special set of rules? So what do I mean by that? Because there's a lot of confusion about what DeFi actually is in the crypto space. So I'm going to talk about CeFi, or centralized finance, which is basically like cryptocurrency exchanges where you deposit money onto their platform. You don't really retain access to your private keys. You're just depositing on the exchange and doing stuff with it. And then when you draw it, it's back in your custody. But the entire time you're using their platform, it's in their custody. So DeFi is a little bit different, where essentially, all the applications are powered by smart contracts in the blockchain, and you custody your own funds with your own wallet. And then when they leave your wallet, you're doing something with it, but then it goes right back to your wallet. So an example would be like Uniswap, the most popular cryptocurrency exchange out there, a DEX, decentralized cryptocurrency exchange, where you're swapping tokens directly with smart contracts. And then that settlement's done on chain, the funds go back to your wallet. So with DeFi, the real question here is it going to have a completely different set of rules? It works completely differently. But for example, like right now, if you go to Uniswap and you swap tokens on there, you don't have to provide any identity information in order to do that, right? You can just swap tokens, on your wallet. But if you sign up for a website like Coinbase, for example, you have to submit your ID documents in order to trade, okay? So are we going to see regulations in the future that would require people to KYC or to swap? If we do, that would greatly diminish the value proposition of decentralized finance or DeFi. And the next big question about future regulations for DeFi is, are we going to see past regulations that were recently placed on the space overturned? So one of those has got to do with Tornado Cash, okay, which is a privacy solution for Ethereum. It's a mixer where you can basically deposit funds into it, withdraw to a new address, and it's very hard to link the identity between those two, okay? And this was recently sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury, okay? So basically, this is one of the most unprecedented things. We've never seen a piece of code actually sanctioned before. A lot of people are calling this a major regulatory overstep. And the question is this setting a precedent for what's to come? Could we see this type of sanctioning just happen for future blockchain projects? Or will we actually see this type of thing, roll back where people can actually use it? All right, one of the next big areas of interest for crypto regulations is going to be what's going on with paying your taxes, okay? So actually just your personal tax filing. So, it's going to depend on each country. Again, I'm talking about this mostly from a U.S. Perspective, but it's a lot of just like common sense stuff that we have some clarity on, but don't have really definitive language as far as I understand it, okay, within the tax code. All right, so basically like, should each crypto transaction be taxed? If you just have some Bitcoin and you bought, a cheeseburger with Bitcoin and the price changed, all right, would you technically be, on the hook for that price difference and accounting for it on your taxes? Or should we have some sort of common sense threshold, let's say a few $100s, and then like transactions totaling, less than that amount shouldn't have to be reported? Now, I have seen proposals for this type of thing come through, but to my knowledge, we haven't seen anything like this totally codified to date. So that's just like one example. And we have other things that we have provisions for right now, like tax loss harvesting in crypto. So basically, like if you bought a bunch of crypto and then, you got a huge loss on that, you could just like sell it and then buy it back instantly, okay? And then you could, lock in a loss on your taxes, but that would reset your long-term capital gain status. But then you could basically, have the same amount of crypto, but then pay less taxes because you could realize that loss. Whereas we don't have something like that. You have wash trading rule in the stock market where you have to wait a certain period of time before you can do something like that. So the real question is, will that provision go away for crypto? Other like clarity on long-term, capital gains laws for, when you acquire coins and like putting them in different wallets, like first in, first out rules. There's lots of gray areas here that you'll get different opinions on depending on who you ask. At least I have. Again, I'm not a tax, expert or accounting expert by any stretch of imagination, but those are just a couple examples of things that are in the conversation. All right, so those are some of the most popular areas of importance for crypto regulations potential in the future, getting clarity on those things and where we could see, future crackdowns. Now, there's some things I didn't totally mention because there's not really enough time in this video, like energy usage in crypto. Okay, that's a big problem when you're talking about how much energy a certain blockchain takes up. That's one thing people are worried about. But let's go on to the next major point, which is, what does all this mean? Okay, we have some crypto regulations now. There's probably some coming in the future in the areas that I've discussed. So what's it mean? Is it good for the industry, bad for the industry? What could it mean for crypto prices? So let's look at a couple different perspectives on this. I'm not saying these are my perspectives necessarily. I'll tell you what my perspective is at the end, but let's look at a couple different viewpoints on this. So one is that, what's really holding back a lot of people from going all in on crypto or more than they are already is the lack of regulatory clarity, okay? Investors in general do not like uncertainty, okay? So if last thing they want to do is, get exposure to the cryptocurrency space by buying crypto assets and then find out that either one, some regulations come into play and now they have, limited access to their capital, or number two, new regulations come onto the scene and spook the markets and their capital's now devalued, okay? So one view is that, if we get regulatory clarity on the space, even if it's not super favorable for the actual crypto industry, that clarity can actually boost investor confidence and get more people to enter. Now, that's a somewhat positive view of crypto regulations, but another skeptical view is, are the regulations actually really going to help anything long term? Like earlier, we were talking about FTX was a regulated institution in many ways, okay? But FTX saw a massive failure, okay? And so even if we get new crypto regulations, are they really going to do what they intend to? Are they really going to, prevent people from doing nefarious things in the future? There's a lot of people who will blindly say yes, but you really have to step back and ask yourself if that's true. Are we still going to see some people go rogue and, try to skirt regulations and end poorly, while the people who try to comply with them, it really just slows them down and hampers the growth of the industry that could grow faster without those types of things? And the fear that, when, we try to regulate something, it creates a new problem, and the answer just becomes more regulations, and we see this snowball, down a path that we really just don't want to go. All right, another view on regulations is that, one of the long-term plans for these is to make way for central bank digital currencies, okay? So with a lot of the upcoming legislation that we've seen for crypto regulations, we've also seen a lot of drafts about future central bank digital currencies. So, the idea kind of looks like this. You have to ask yourself, why hasn't crypto been banned yet? People see it as this big threat. Why have we seen this huge crackdown to date? Well, part of it's like, well, you don't really intend to ban something that you want to, regulate or tax, okay, or, propose some propelling alternative to. And that's sort of like the idea with potential future central bank digital currencies. So let's say that you had a Fed coin, so to speak. I'm just kind of making that name up, right? So then you have these other, private alternatives. Well, if you heavily regulate these private alternatives or tax them, and it makes your option look more favorable, then that is a way to sort of like push people towards using the thing that you created or incentivize them to do that rather than using the alternative. So that's one potential thing to look out for in the future. It's crypto regulations basically paving the way for, handing you a central bank digital currency on a silver platter so that it looks like the attractive option. All right, so those are some different perspectives on the regulations that could come and what they could mean for the cryptocurrency space, the entire industry itself. So what is my view on this, okay? So my view is kind of mixed on this whole thing, okay? So on the one hand, like we do already have regulations in crypto, okay? I think that crypto can actually exist just fine without adding additional regulations to it, simply because, I'm kind of the opinion that adding regulations, they don't always actually have the intended outcome, okay? And that when they fail to have the intended outcome or create some other side effect, that usually the answer is just to add more regulations, and we kind of get in this vicious cycle. And it really just hampers the opportunity. But I am a realist, okay, in thinking that, regulations are probably inevitable at this point. So what can we really do is to accept that fact and then work towards the best regulations possible and try to keep from this cyclical thing of just adding on more and more and more regulations. So what could that look like? Well, I think one of the best ways to get started is, if we are going to accept that regulations are coming, is that we try to draft regulations for crypto specifically that are not just like taking existing regulations from other, financial products and just slapping them on crypto, because it's kind of like putting a square peg in a round hole. Okay, we really need common sense regulation drafted from the ground up, specifically in a bespoke fashion for crypto itself. And if we can go down that road and try to, limit the amount of regulation that we can get, then in my opinion, that's probably the best trade-off that we can realistically expect over the long term. All right, so that's an overview of the conversation that's happening right now around crypto regulations. Again, none of this is taken as legal advice or financial advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a financial advisor, accountant, anything like that. But I'm super plugged in this space. I listen to the conversation that everyone has, and that's my take on what we're talking about and what we could see in the future. So I hope you like this video. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps these videos out so that more people can learn about blockchain. And if you're as fast with this technology as I am, you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? Well, you can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find my free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I can show you how to master blockchain step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. Until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.